The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I despise cronyism and corruption, and I recently learned that the FBI has a new headquarters in the works. They've got a $1.7 billion contract that's up for grabs to build their new building in the Washington, D.C. area. And it turns out that one of the three finalists that's being considered for that contract is a company that just so happens to own buildings with both the Trump Organization and Jared Kushner's family, a $21 billion real estate investment firm called Vornado Realty Trust. Vornado owns buildings with Trump in New York and San Francisco, as well as the flagship skyscraper for Kushner companies in New York City, which happens to be 666 Fifth Avenue. A little ominous. Anyway, that building has had conflict of interest scandals in the past related to investors and the Chinese government. But this here is a clear and obvious conflict of interest, especially since, as you probably remember, Donald Trump never divested from his company when he became president. Virginia Congressman Gerald Connolly, who represents a part of Virginia where the new FBI building might be built, told Vornado, drop the bid. He said to the Associated Press, quote, that shifts the ethical burden to his business partners. We're in a position where once again, he shrugged off his responsibilities and is it pronounced sloughed or sloughed? Sloughed it off. Sloughed it off to someone else. I've never known how to pronounce that word. Anyway, Vornado has refused to comment on the situation. The Trump Organization and Jared Kushner's company have refused to comment on the situation. The White House said in a statement, quote, Jared takes the ethics rules very seriously. Hard to even read it with a straight face. And would never compromise himself or the administration. Hard to get through that one. Well, now I'm reassured. So we have no real answers from anyone involved. And maybe you're saying, all right, well, listen, Vornado isn't owned by anyone in the White House, and there isn't necessarily a conflict here. Vornado's CEO, Stephen Roth, also happens to be very close to Donald Trump and is one of Donald Trump's advisors about infrastructure. Should an infrastructure advisor to the federal government be profiting from the building of a federal government's physical infrastructure? Roth is also a consultant for the White House Office of American Innovation, a new office created, by the way, by Donald Trump and run, coincidentally, by Jared Kushner. Stephen Schooner, who's a professor of government procurement law at George Washington University, said this is very suspect. He wrote in an email, quote, this would absolutely pose an apparent and potentially an actual conflict of interest. I cannot imagine any modern era precedent for the president and his advisor and son-in-law not recognizing that this is a problem and shutting this down before it gets any worse. There are endless conflicts of interest. This is another version of Dick Cheney's Halliburton all over again. This is a level of cronyism reminiscent of Russia. Don't worry, though. Russia is also interested in building the new FBI headquarters. Would be super secure. Don't worry about it. I'm kidding about that. I want to make sure people realize that's just a joke.
I mean, is it possible that Donald Trump, being this big business magnate, having all of these real estate places all across the world, that he's just tied to so many people that you can't really avoid conflict of interest?
You could make that argument. That is the one argument you could make. But still, to maintain the lack of an appearance of impropriety, Vornado should just say, we're not going to bid on this because we are connected. There are companies that could do the job that are not connected to Donald Trump. And this gets me into the next thing I want to briefly address. Despite the focus being on Russia due to the scandalous nature of the allegations right now, there is way more to investigate about Donald Trump than just Russia. Trump should definitely be investigated for possible collusion between his campaign and Russia, and we should be following those investigations. But there are way more areas of investigation that are warranted for Donald Trump. A week ago today, or yesterday, Dan Alexander at Forbes broke the story that Eric Trump, Trump's son, has been lying to donors who give money to his charity while he's been funneling money into the Trump organization. It's a charity for kids with cancer, and that needs to be investigated, as well as many other charitable giving related issues with Donald Trump. Eric Trump has been evasive when confronted about this. Ian Jalul, who served as a longtime membership director at Trump National Westchester Golf Course, said to Forbes that, quote, in the early years, they weren't being billed for the club. The bills would just disappear. Mr. Trump had a cow. He flipped. He was like, we're donating all of this stuff and there's no paper trail, no credit. And he went nuts. He said, I don't care if it's my son or not. Everybody gets billed. And thus, funneling money from charitable donations to Trump golf courses started. Speaking of which, Donald Trump's own charity has acted in legally questionable ways a number of times. Melania Trump once used $20,000 of charitable money from the Trump Foundation to buy a painting of Donald Trump, which is now on display at one of Trump's golf courses. Trump himself used $12,000 of charitable funds to buy a football helmet autographed by football player Tim Tebow. Many in our audience might also remember the time that the Trump Foundation made a major donation to Pam Bondi's Attorney General campaign in Florida. The foundation hid from the IRS, and Bondi later dropped Florida's investigation into Trump University. Very sketchy. Trump actually did receive a slap on the wrist fine for that. And it goes much, much further than this. Possible, look at Trump's history, right? Forget about the possible. Money laundering at a New Jersey casino. Racial discrimination at Trump's apartment buildings, possible FTC violations for stock purchases, SEC violations for financial reporting issues, the entire Trump University thing. So I think, Pat, it's important not to ignore what's going on with Russia, but it's also important not to put all your eggs in that basket, because there is a long history of questionable activity from Donald Trump.
You know, during the transition, there was a lot of talk about if Donald Trump would be breaking the emoluments clause by allowing foreign dignitaries to stay at his D.C. hotel. That talk kind of went by the wayside in recent months, but now you have the attorney generals from both Maryland and the District of Columbia who are pressing charges.
Absolutely. And here is a classic just to send you off with. Donald Trump once offered $1 million prize if you could hit a hole in one at one of his golf courses. Someone actually hit a hole in one. But Donald Trump refused to pay him the money because the fine print of the contest said the hole-in-one has to be from more than 150 yards. The course was set up so that the holes in which you could hit a hole-in-one had the tee boxes under 150 yards from the pin. The guy who hit the hole-in-one sued, and they ended up settling. But guess who paid the guy? Not Trump's for-profit golf course. It was Trump's charity, the Trump Foundation, that paid out the money.
That's disturbing.
It's unbelievable,
I'm
right?
out of words, yeah.
It's almost difficult to believe. So anyway, there's way more here, folks, than just the Russia investigation. And I've only given you a brief introduction to that. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @DPacman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Scott Kale. Scott, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. We depend on the support of members like Scott at davidpakman.com/membership. If this program is valuable to you, if you would be disappointed if the program went off the air, then please consider supporting us at davidpakman.com/membership. The coupon code I voted 17 is available. And of course, you can make a pledge of as little as $1 a month. Every dollar is appreciated at patreon.com/davidpakmanshow. Let's jump onto the phones and see what's on people's minds. Our number is 617-830-4750. We will go to our caller from the 608 area code. Caller, tell us who you are and what's on your mind today. Caller from 608, are you there?
No. Hi, David. This is Brian from Madison, Wisconsin.
Brian, we were milliseconds from ending the call, but you showed up. That's good. What's on your mind today?
Regarding yesterday's Sessions testimony and the broader scandals over the White House, do you think that Democrats are putting too much political capital and public energy into the investigation of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, when some of the financial scandals like the children's not-for-profit or the violations of the emoluments clause through the Trump organization have just so much more evidence and are potentially equally damning?
Yeah, so two-part answer. Very, very good question. So number one, there's a risk for Democrats to just putting energy into the Russia investigation instead of other investigations into Trump, because as you're pointing out astutely, there's so much else that is disturbing, including the emoluments clause violations, potentially, including the nonprofit and charitable donation issues. And it really goes actually quite a bit further than that. But there's another angle to this, which is I've been increasingly concerned, and this applies both to House and Senate Democrats, but also to a lot of the energy that's behind many of the big protests we've seen dating all the way back to November of 2016, that just being anti-Trump is really, really risky, and progressives need to have a platform that stands on its own, really for two reasons. Number one, if nothing comes of Trump Russia, other than just hampering Trump's PR for the next 2 to 4 years, then you're going to need something other than being about Trump Russia to justify people voting for you in 2018 and 2020. But think about it the other way as well. If Trump Russia leads to Trump being impeached or resigned, just hypothetically thinking ahead, once Trump's gone, you also can't just run against Trump because Trump's gone. So I completely agree with you. And I would even go further than what you're saying, that yes, there needs to be focus in many other areas while these investigations happen, but it's important to focus on and report on the investigations as well.
Yeah, definitely agree. I do think that while there were definitely improprieties within, Sessions recusing himself and then firing Comey, and Comey's testimony about, Trump asking for his loyalty, that isn't direct collusion with the Russians, and this whole thing might be a lot of wasted effort. Right. That ultimately backfires on the...
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that risk, and that's why it's important to focus on more than just that. Thanks so much for the call. Really, really appreciate it. We are taking your calls at 617-830-4750. We are going to go to our next caller from the 516 area code. Caller, tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and what question you have today.
Okay, I'm from Lawton, New York. My name is Monique. And my question, I'm not even sure if I could call it a question, but it's a little unorthodox. It's my observation that sometimes Democrats and conservatives and Democrats and Republicans, they talk past each other, in the sense that Republicans aren't interested in the 23 million people that might lose health insurance, in so much that they're more interested in how it would affect them. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking it would be a little more efficient, or it would actually get their attention if everything was framed in a way that would show them how it would directly affect them. For instance,
yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Let me see if I can jump in and give my thoughts on that, because there's sort of a lot there. And I think if we go further, we might, there's already a lot to discuss there. I've been arguing for a while that if progressives want to make inroads, probably not with Republican lawmakers, but maybe with moderate and conservative voters, you need to start talking about the issues that are important to us in terms that will resonate with them. George Lakoff has talked about this when it comes to framing. When we talk about healthcare, it needs to be talked as a patriotic duty to make sure that at least some basic level of care is afforded to all. And I would add, we can also talk about how it will hit their checkbooks when people are uninsured and use the emergency room as primary care. When we talk about the environment and climate change, we need to be talking not about science and 97 or 98% of scientists believe this and that, although that's true, because if they haven't been convinced by that already, they're not going to be convinced by that. We need to be talking about the moral and ethical duty that exists, the nationalistic opportunity for the United States to take the lead on the future of technology. There are other ways to frame these issues to appeal to the right. And I think you're absolutely right about that.
Thanks.
All right. Very good. Great to hear from you, Monique, in New York. Very, very much appreciated. We are taking calls at 617-830-4750. We're going to go to our next caller from the 786 area code. Caller, introduce yourself and tell me what's on your mind today.
Oh, my God. Pull in the area. It's really big. Watch out for the dumbbell or for the plate. Yeah, watch out for the barbell, bro. Gotta go now.
They're lifting weights?
I think people are lifting weights, yeah.
There it goes.
Now it sounds like a car.
Yeah. Anybody there, 786?
Yeah, oh, yes. I'm sorry. Pardon me. I got on the delay.
Was
Thank
someone
you for,
spotting you there
allowing me on,
lifting weights? Are you lifting weights right now?
No, I was looking at a friend's YouTube video. Sorry about that.
All right.
I do fitness videos, and I follow a lot of fitness guys.
Gotcha.
I apologize for that.
What's on your mind?
I have one question.
Yep.
I'm a progressive, but I want to start on the local level of government. What issues would you deem that could or should be the most important that local people that are running as progressives should be advocating and pushing for?
Oh, it's so tough to say because when you're talking locally, different parts of the country have very different issues.
In Miami, Florida.
Okay,
Right.
well, I don't know specifically
I'm
in
in
Miami.
Miami, Florida, by the way.
Gotcha, you're in Miami, Florida. I don't know specifically in Miami.
Yes, sir.
I think the difficulty, Pat, is we've talked about the lack of cohesion from progressives nationally on something other than Trump and the Republicans are bad right now. And it's understandable because Trump is such a disaster, and I get that. But we've talked about healthcare, environment, something cohesive on energy, national security in a way that makes sense and is not bigoted and whatever. The local progressive issues really vary, not even from state to state, but from district to district. So it's tough to come up with a laundry list like that.
Well, how about focusing on gerrymandering? Because, of course, after the census is conducted, state legislatures are typically the ones that draw district lines.
Right.
And if you change who the legislatures are or form some sort of independent commission, that's a step in the right direction.
That's interesting because gerrymandering is an issue that is local, but it has national impact in terms of the balance of power. I think that's interesting. But yeah, it's very tough because the issues in Miami, Florida that progressives might be best suited to work on locally are going to be drastically different than the issues in Washington State, for example,
Correct. No, I understand that. And, as far as most issues, I have to give my representative credit, even though she's a Republican. But Illeana Ros-Lehtinen, believe it or not, on gay issues and on Trump care, she voted against Trump care. And I mean, it puts me in a place where I never vote for her. I have never voted for her. Yeah. But I find it hard sometimes to say absolutely the worst things about her. She's hyper ethnic with the Cuban stuff, which I think sometimes goes a little bit too far. But
what do you mean by that? What do you mean I'm interested in that. What do you mean she's hyper ethnic?
Well, she's a, how do you say it? If you live in Miami and you're an American person, I'll say it that way, an Anglo person, you understand what I'm talking about when you say hyper-Cuban. They can be very, they're a minority that has kind of always been coddled in a ways. They began a lot of extra things that other immigrants have never begun. I mean, there was the Cuban American Act, I believe it was in 1962, which gave them Social Security funds. And if they are born in Cuba, they automatically qualify for, I think it's on food stamps for SNAP and so forth. And what you would have, and this is what would make so many people angry in the store. And I understood where their anger was coming from. You would see people that would have grandma, who was born in Cuba, would be getting her SNAP, and the next generation have done well in the United States. They've made money.
And that upset you when you would see that? That would upset you.
And that would upset. I used to work part-time as a second job as a cashier at Publix, and I would see that. And I would see people behind them that were Anglos that would just get boiling mad because these people would, and you can verify this, David, Pat, if you look it up, they get, until they die, they're going to get SNAP, and they were, I don't know if that's ended, they used to get Social Security payments as well because it was considered a helping hand. But it was keeping on going and going.
Got it.
And they were getting this money.
Yep.
And yet their family and their generations, down 1-2 generations, were doing okay in the United States. And it would just make people very angry.
Hey, I just out of curiosity, when you talk about Anglos, would an Italian person be Anglo?
Myself, I'm Irish and English and German descent that have been in the United States. My family came from England, 1688. The Clements. My name is Kevin Clements.
Okay, good.
My last name. The people. They've been here. They were in Virginia, and then from the 1730s they were in Georgia.
Got it.
And then they came to Miami.
Okay,
in the 1890s.
Point made, point taken. I think I got it there. Yeah.
Irish.
It's all it's complex, that's for sure. I do appreciate the call. We're going to have to move on. A lot of strong feelings there, Pat. Very, very strong.
Kind of went off
feelings.
the rails a little bit.
It did go off the rails a little bit there. Yeah. We are taking calls at 617-830-4750. Let's take our next caller from the 415 area code. Okay, caller, feel free to tell us who you are and jump right into your question.
Hey, it's Gabriel from San Francisco.
Great. What's on your mind?
So I was just wondering, do you or Pat watch House of Cards? I'm totally hooked on it, and I was wondering how similar you think it is to real life Washington.
Yeah, both Pat and I are watching season 5 right now. Pat's a little further ahead of where I am.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest. I'm finding myself a little bit bored with season 5 for 2 reasons. One, I don't think the writing is nearly as good as in earlier seasons, and let's all be careful not to do any spoiling for anybody. And I'm finding it too milquetoast compared to the Trump White House. Like the things that are happening in House of Cards are not nearly as crazy as what's happening in the White House. You know what I mean?
I just don't know which is more cynical, the actual House of Cards or the real White House.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And I think this is the last season, right?
Yeah, I think so.
No.
Season 3 was really bad. I kind of had to just make it through that one to get to season 4, which was better.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to watch to the end, and we'll see how it all wraps up. But yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with season 5 so far. All right, Gabe. Thanks for the call. Always great to hear from San Francisco, California. We're taking calls, and we will continue taking calls after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Let's go back to the phone, 617-830-4750. We are going to take our next caller from the 443 area code. Caller, please tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and you can go right into your question, if you will.
Hi, David. My name's Joey. I'm calling from Baltimore.
Great.
I'm wondering about how you see the political fallout of the D.C. shooting playing out. Do you think the shooting will allow Republicans political cover to further distract from investigations into the Trump campaign and Russian influence on the election?
Yeah, I think it probably will. Immediately, when it happened, I was watching the statement from President Donald Trump, and immediately I thought, this is going to potentially boost Trump's approval, or at least temper disapproval of Trump. This is going to take attention away from many of the very serious things that are happening. And by the way, even though it should get us thinking once again about an issue that has not been in the forefront for a while, which is gun safety regulations, it probably won't really do anything to move forward gun safety regulations, despite the fact that we had another member of Congress, remember Gabby Gifford some years ago, also shot. Another member of Congress shot. I absolutely, and Pat, I said it to you when we were watching that. I have serious concerns about that. And, we've seen the Trump-Russia scandal after scandal with Trump, all sorts of scandals, his Middle Eastern trip and everything. What's going on with Trump's tax plan? Nothing. What's going on with the repeal of the Affordable Care Act and its replacement with that bogus version 2 of Republicare or whatever? Nothing. What's going on with the Mexican wall? Absolutely nothing. Travel ban, dead again earlier this week. And we might see another layer of that as a result of this shooting. Although I don't know that it's going to stay in the news cycle that long.
Well, especially if Republicans are able to play the victim here. I mean, obviously these assassination attempts are horrible on their face because, that's immoral. But on the second layer, it's counterproductive entirely to their political cause because it's going to spark some sympathy for the victims.
Yes, absolutely. So I think your concern, Joey, is spot on.
Thank you for taking my call.
All right. Very much appreciated. Hope to hear from you again. We are taking calls at 617-830-4750. Let's go to our next caller from the 858 area code. Caller from 858, introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind today.
Hey, David. This is Kevin from San Diego.
All right.
And I recently read about Reza Aslan, who worked for CNN. He got fired for saying some naughty things about Donald Trump on Twitter.
Yep.
And I know he's someone that you idolize and admire very much. And I was wondering if I could get your thoughts about the whole ordeal.
Listen, so we've done video. I have no problem with Reza Aslan personally, in the sense that I don't know the guy. I've criticized things that he said, and I've tried to do it in as fact-based as possible a way. So when I found out that he had made these aggressive comments about the president on Twitter, and that CNN decided, basically, they called it parting ways, a mutual decision to part ways. If CNN hadn't thought that it might be good to part ways, I don't know how that it was mutual, even though it said it was mutual. I have no problem with the comments the guy made on Twitter. I mean,
what did he say exactly?
Do you remember, Kevin, exactly what he did say on Twitter about Trump?
Yeah, it was basically after the London attack, and Sadiq Khan said something about police and to not be worried. And then Trump said, "Oh, this is why we need a travel ban." And then Reza said, "Oh, this guy's a piece of shit, and he's a disgrace to humanity, and he's a man-child who should be ignored in times of crisis," things like that. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not offended by those comments. I think that by and large, what Reza Aslan said is accurate. It changes my views 0% in terms of the prior criticisms of Reza Aslan, and CNN as a private company can do whatever it wants. And if they say, hey, we don't want people on our air who are saying things like this, then by all means, I defend their decision. But I'm not offended by what Reza Aslan said. You know what I mean?
And it makes sense coming from CNN because they try to do this false balance, we're in the middle type thing too. Yeah. So they don't want to appear liberal. That's true. Yeah. So listen, I mean, am I glad Reza Aslan got fired? I don't know. I never watched his show. I have no idea whether it's any good or it isn't. Am I offended by what he said? No. Do my views change on the critiques I've already made of him? The answer is also no there, Kevin. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, David. All right. Thank you so much for the call. Very much appreciated. We are taking calls at 617-830-4750. Why don't we go, I don't know, if Pat will allow it, I'll go to the 757 area code next. Caller from 757, please tell us who are you and what's on your mind today.
Hello, how you doing? I'm actually a 17-year-old viewer on your channel on YouTube,
Okay.
And I actually enjoy watching your channel because by me being 17 and about to enter the world and being a senior in high school coming up this year, it's very informing to me, and that allows me to know what's going on in the world. And I appreciate that. And like how you handle your views and everything is just outstanding. You know, you never break character or act immature. You don't do anything to cause.
Well, it's not a character, let me tell you that.
Upstir. Right. But yeah, I just wanted to call and tell you that I think you're doing an amazing job with your channel.
Thank you.
And how you're running everything is really amazing. And I also had a question.
Please.
Well, not really a question, a statement to make about, I don't really remember her name, but the lady holding up the mannequin head of Donald Trump.
Yes, Kathy Griffin.
My personal opinion, my personal opinion on that was kind of out of character for her to do something like that. I believe if you have a problem with the president, not saying I'm with or against, I'm just saying in general, you know, you can voice your opinion in a less disturbing way. Now, as we can all clearly see, without her even trying to come back and cover it up, she has a problem with him. Now, there are ways to handle things being an adult, which she should know. Even I know that. But with a situation like that, it should have never been carried out like that. Now, I already know a lot of people don't like our president, but, you know, everybody had the chance to vote, and we all took that chance to vote. And the outcome became the outcome. There are certain ways and certain things to do to go about handling the situation without having to be so graphic and just unnecessary like that.
Right, but let me ask you this question, okay? And what was your name, by the way?
Kai Diggs.
Okay. Here's the question. Were you more offended by Kathy Griffin holding up a doll's head or by the fact that Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords within hours of that incident happening, which is now making the United States the laughingstock of the world and a negative force on saving the environment? Like, which one offended you more?
I would say by him making us the laughing stock.
Right. So in the
Honestly,
grand scheme of things, even if we can say that what Kathy Griffin did was in poor taste or we wouldn't have done it or it wasn't funny or whatever the case may be, the amount of coverage that that received versus the disaster of leaving the Paris Climate Agreement, sort of disproportionate. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, we agree then. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the call, and, you know, check in with us again, and best of luck as you, are you going to college?
I plan on going to college. I'm going into my senior year of high school right now, but I plan on attending college.
Very nice. All right. Well, listen, stay in touch. Let us know what's going on, and I really, really appreciate the call. I think we maybe have time for one, maybe two more calls. We're taking the calls at 617-830-4750. Our next caller is from the 385 area code. Caller, what's your name and what's on your mind?
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Perfect. This is Heather Roberts, and I'm currently from Salt Lake City, Utah. My question is this for you. I'm currently a biology student or a science student, and I'm wanting to get your input for someone who's young, who's wanting to enter the political process. I'm only 20 years of age, but I was curious, what advice or what exactly would you suggest for someone who is wanting to enter politics in a red state to try and move for a more progressive agenda?
Well, I think set your sights at what is most accessible right now. And that might be, I don't know what the government structure is where you either have residency or would be able to get involved in the political process. But if you can look into running as a city councilor somewhere, sometimes those races are, in Western Massachusetts, in the city of Northampton, where we started the show, if you could put together 400 votes, I believe, you could become a city councilor.
Yeah.
And so there are places, and I'm sure you know of some of these places as well, Pat, where the barrier to entry for someone who's motivated and energetic is not that high to get into some kind of political or government position.
Yeah, or even these school counselor positions, you can do that too. And being a recent student yourself, you would have a good perspective and probably be able to win one of those elections and meet a lot of people in that arena.
Yeah, can you get involved in like student senate at your university?
So I'm a student at Westminster College. It's a small liberal arts school, and I'm actually involved in a process in a few organizations, Democracy Now! And a few others that are trying to bridge party lines between Republicans and Democrats. So I am currently involved. However, I was curious to have your input. I've been watching the show for around 2 years now, and this is the first time I've been calling in, and I wanted to get your input more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, look into whether there's a city council opportunity. There's also, even if you can't do that, there are many appointed positions on commissions, right? So they're not elected. It's basically just, hey, we need 4 people to serve on this committee, and it's a committee that includes both members, elected officials, and lay people, for lack of a better term. And we work together, and it could be on a variety of different issues. That's an opportunity. Depending on the state you're in, being a state representative. I mean, that crazy anti-gay former Navy chaplain, Gordon Klingenschmidt, he got himself elected to the Colorado State House for 1 term, and that seemed incredibly unlikely.
David Duke in Louisiana.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of possibilities if you bring energy.
That's an excellent point. And I know that there are probably other callers on the line, but could I ask you one other question?
Quickly, please. Yes, by all means.
Absolutely. I'll be as quick as possible. And then, obviously, being a science student myself, not the inability, but the lack of general understanding in any sort of science field, and I think the better issue that we can both agree on would be global climate destabilization, or for lack of a better term, climate change. What is in your view, and in Pat's view, the best way to try and initiate more of a scientific literacy in the local community and more abroad?
Yeah, well, so you're asking more about the broader thing, which is, why would anyone be against dealing with climate change as a human-influenced issue, given what the science says? And we've talked many times about how, due to a lack of both
not
critical...
only with climate change.
Not
only with climate change, but you look at... once again, not only with climate change, but with stem cell research, with scientific funding in general, and how there's been just a complete upheaval, not only with the Trump administration, but other administrations who have not divested or invested more in general. That's the point that I'm getting at.
Right. Okay. But I think that's probably a broader issue, and we'd have to dig into it in another episode, but a very relevant issue, and I do appreciate you bringing it up. And thank you sincerely for the phone call. On that note, we will wrap up calls for the week, go to a break, and then get to other stuff after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Let's do some audience questions. First one today is from Chrissy. Hey guys, what's better? McDonald's, Burger King, or Wendy's? Or what about Subway? We might be like the worst people to answer this question, Pat. It's been 15 years since I've been to any of those places. These places are not really vegan havens of any kind.
No, I mean, sometimes they'll go to McDonald's for their coffee.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to bring up another coffee scandal, but with that exception, I don't go there.
Yeah, I mean, the Keurig-Gate was bad enough. I think the last thing we need is a McDonald's coffee scandal. Listen, I used to go to these places when I was younger, but I don't anymore. I just think it's all bad. Knowing very little about how they've changed since, I think if I went into a Burger King, I'd have no idea what's going on in there. But from what I recall, Burger King fries were always a disaster. Wendy's chicken nuggets, I remember being the best. Subway's bread had very strange chemicals in it, which I think they've gotten rid of. I mean, I know Arby's was kind of a train wreck. I used to go there as well. I don't even go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts at this point. And I know that those aren't fast food in the same sense. They're more like, corporate cafes or whatever. But if I had to go back to one of them, I remember towards the end of my fast food phase, again, this was like 15 years ago at this point, maybe even more like 16 years ago. I don't know the last time I've been to any of these places. I liked Wendy's the best.
Right. And of course, these things are cheap calories too, and I think that's a big reason why people go there.
Although
I always remember,
there are other places. It's not always as cheap as some people think, depending on what you're getting. But yes, it is relatively inexpensive.
In terms of prepared food, I think it's relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
I remember always going to McDonald's because I just thought that the other fast food burger type joints were second rate compared to McDonald's.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that, I feel like a lot of times it's like within families. Like I have a friend whose family always went to Burger King instead of McDonald's, and they had this idea that Burger King was way better. I couldn't honestly tell you if there's any appreciable difference. Like if you say, let's compare the hamburgers at these places when it comes to, the crappiness of the ingredients or whatever. I really don't know if there's a difference.
It could even be in terms of the fact that I think there are more McDonald's and they're just so ubiquitous that, it's one of those kind of biases. But aside from fast food joints like that, I think, I'll sometimes go to Subway. I'll get a veggie delight on white, for example.
Oh, you will?
Or I'll go to the burrito joints as well.
So like Chipotle type place?
Chipotle, yes.
Chipotle, I don't go to. I famously went to the one on Northwestern, Connecticut Ave Northwest in Washington, D.C. when I was walking with my rollerboard suitcase towards the whatever, I think it's the Hilton that's up there. Or whatever hotel it was that a conference I was going to was taking place in. And after the constant salmonella, listeria, I don't know what it is, and my preference for supporting local burrito joints, which there's so many of, I've been to Chipotle twice and that's it. And I don't even think the prices are different. I think Chipotle, the prices are, it's not even really like a financial thing. People say, well, I go to Chipotle because it's cheaper. There's usually a local Mexican place in most urban areas that is just as inexpensive as Chipotle.
People are just comfortable with what they know. But when it comes to Chipotle, that only ranks third on my burrito hierarchy. I put Boloco and Moe's Southwest Grill ahead of Chipotle.
Oh, as far as chain burrito places.
Yes.
I see what you're saying.
And also pizza joints. Do you have any preference?
I don't go to any fast food pizza. The last time I had Domino's, this is I'll tell a sanitized version of the story, but I remember it because it was the day before a big New Year's Eve party I went to, and I was not feeling well at the party related to my experience. The last time I ever ate at Domino's Pizza was December 30th of 1999. Okay, Pat was in diapers at the time, and
31st.
No, December 30th. It was the day before New Year's Eve.
Got you.
And I went to Domino's and became quite ill as a result of the food that I had there, and as a result, the December 31st. Was not the most fun for me.
Yeah, see, you always talk about your high school job at Circuit City,
right?
Correct? My high school job was at Domino's Pizza.
Oh, no.
And I'm admitting to that. I was there for about 10 months, and I couldn't even be a delivery driver because I wasn't old enough.
Right.
And I made the pizza. Who would trust me in making a pizza? I don't know.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But, the good news is there's no more coffee scandals because you've just completely outdone it by saying you used to make the pizzas at Domino's. So I think you don't have to worry about any more coffee scandals.
But I was underage at the time, so I think I can get a pass with that one. I wasn't a legal adult yet.
Even better, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know, Chrissy, hopefully I've provided something of value to you, but I'm not exactly the right person for this type of question, but people feel very strongly about it. And also, looking at this, we've got Friendlies, which is, are Friendlies national? Because I know it started in Wilbraham, Massachusetts or somewhere around there.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
There are very few of them now.
Right, yeah, a lot of them have closed down. I've never been to Popeye's Chicken and Biscuits, which is mentioned here. I don't know that I've ever been to Hardee's.
Hardee's and Carl's Jr. are the same, but the name is different depending on where you are in the country.
Oh, okay. And I think I went to Sonic when I was in California a long time ago. KFC I actually did kind of used to like. KFC, interestingly, KFC is the place I've been to most recently. I think maybe 9 years ago I went to a KFC, or 8 years ago. And all these others, it's been, closing in on 2 decades.
I liked Sonic for the experience because you go into this little drive-up window type place,
right.
And the waitresses will come out on roller skates. So how can you not like that?
Yeah, no, Pat loved that. Pat would go just for that, really.
Just for the roller skates, yeah.
Lucas wrote in saying, "What cliche quote do you hate the most?" I've mentioned one of the ones I really dislike, which is we'll have to agree to disagree. But I don't know if that qualifies as a cliche quote. Another one that really bothers me is everything happens for a reason, because it is both completely true and meaningless, right? I mean, in a sense, yes, effects have causes, and without getting metaphysical or religious about it, that's just sort of a reality. What things happen, there are reasons why things happen, and even though they may be random in a sense, or they may be related merely to the odds or probability of them happening. Yes, things happen for a reason. So there's that. It's meaningless in that sense. And then if the other thing is, listen, your life is predestined, predetermined, there's no free will, well, I might as well not even really try to make decisions because, hey, listen, things just happen for a reason. I'm never going to know those reasons, so I might as well just not worry about it and not worry about decisions that I make. I find it to be devoid of meaning.
You know what quote I hate? It is what it is. Of course it is what it is. That's what it is. What else would it be?
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it's meaningless. It doesn't really do anything. I guess it's sort of meant to say, this is where we are, and we can only now make decisions based on this. There's no point in talking about how things could be different.
Yeah. How about money can't buy happiness? I mean, that's true to some extent, but I think money gives you a platform to which you can find yourself in a happier place, certainly more so than if you're struggling to get by.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research on that concept, and of course, life satisfaction is different than happiness, and there are different studies about, well, does money beyond a certain purchasing power actually lead to more happy people or people who are more satisfied with their lives? It's not even completely true that money doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah, I've seen studies as to like showing maybe around $70,000 to $80,000. That's where people are happiest, but who can really know?
Yeah, it's it's a difficult thing to measure. I'm trying to think if there's any other cliche quotes.
Good things come to those who wait.
Yeah, unless you wait too long.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's to this idea that you should be determined and keep striving at your goals.
But patient.
You should be patient, but you can't just let opportunities pass you by either.
Yeah, yeah. I find a lot of these quotes are kind of pointless.
Like, what if you see a good-looking person at a bar that you want to approach, and you wait too long and someone else gets ahead of you?
Good things would have come to you if you had just waited longer, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense either. But I guess at the top of my list are everything happens for a reason, and we have to agree to disagree.
Also, if all was fair in love and war, we wouldn't have war crimes.
I've never even heard that one.
Oh, really?
I mean, I know the whole nothing's fair in love and war, but I've never heard if all was fair in love and war, we wouldn't have war crimes.
Maybe it's not cliche then.
I think you just made it up.
Okay.
Yeah. Mia wrote in saying, is it normal to care about sports less as you get older? You know what, Mia? I resisted sort of conceding the premise of your question for a long time, particularly when I was living in New York City and I was feeling the absence of the local Boston sports stations, and I couldn't just turn on my TV and watch any Celtics game that I wanted, any Red Sox game that I wanted. Never really was a big hockey watcher, but even Patriots games sometimes, you would not get that game living in New York City. And when I finally moved back to Boston and finally had all of our local sports teams at my disposal, I realized I don't really have time to watch 162 Red Sox games on TV like I used to. I don't have time to watch 82 basketball games on TV like I used to. I actually used to watch, I like basketball a lot, and I used to like NBA games so much, and college basketball. Didn't matter what was on TV, I would just watch it. There was a 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. You know the West Coast NBA games that start at 10:30 p.m. and go until 1 a.m. here on the East Coast? School night, I used to watch those just because I love basketball. I think it is normal to watch less sports, and I think less is the correct term there, not fewer, on TV as one gets older. Although I'm still as big of a fan of our local sports teams, but, you know, I don't start paying attention to the Red Sox until a little later in the season. I don't watch every Celtics game. As a social thing, I'll watch most Patriots games, but if it's a 1 p.m. game on a Sunday, I might not watch because I'm out doing other things.
Well, when I was younger, I would not only watch sports itself, but also the
sports analysis.
The sports analysis, like the ESPN2 shows, like First Take and PTI.
Right.
And then I got to a point where I was thinking, does it really matter? I mean, a political debate influences people's lives, and you have to come to a decision about people's health care and their taxes and all that stuff. It has actual consequences, but just debating who's a better basketball player, LeBron James or Steph Curry, what does it really matter?
No, I experienced the same thing. I used to watch those shows, watch SportsCenter every morning, and listen to, you know, WEEI, which is the one of the Boston sports stations. I think it's normal, Mia. I think it is normal. And I know that there are people who are still just as into sports at age 40 as they were at age 30, as they were at age 20, as they were at age 15 or whatever. And that's great, you know. But I think it is very common that you can't keep up with it as much and still have everything else that an adult might have in their life.
Well, when it comes to playing sports, I think that's a lot more important when you're younger, because not only does it give you some exercise and allows you to learn valuable lessons like sportsmanship, it also can be a big financial opportunity for you. Let's say you're able to get a scholarship to college, or even pursue being a professional athlete.
The professional athlete thing happens at a tiny level, but the college part of it is more common, especially because there's more sports for which you could get scholarships. But from a health perspective, I think it's actually really important to keep doing sports. Like, I'm way more likely to go and play a sport now than just watch a random game on TV.
Yeah, and now when you're older, it's more about exercise and entertainment, which are great things too, but not as important as when you were younger.
Yes. All right, so listen, I think it is completely normal to get a little more disconnected from sports as you get older. We will talk on the bonus show about so many great things that I don't even have time to tell you about.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Right now and get access to the bonus show instantly.